Welcome into the Rockies Insider. I'm your Rockies Insider, Patrick Lyons. And if you're watching live on YouTube or live over on X, you've seen the headline. You know what I'm getting to today. I'm going to get things started with the 4-2 win on Sunday. The Rockies playing well enough to get the victory and avoid the sweep at the hands or the scales, depending on how you might look at it, of the Arizona Diamondbacks. But the Rockies, we saw it on Friday, we saw it on Saturday. They continue to struggle at home. While in the month of June, they've got 9 wins, which is great, right? 9-11 overall this month. 7-4 on the road. A lot of that coming against the Marlins and the Nationals. Only 2-7 at home with Sunday's win. Their record entering Sunday at Coors Field is their worst through the first 36 games in franchise history. Even with the win today, I believe that's still the worst in 37 games. 400 is the lowest winning percentage they've ever had in a single season in 32 years in Denver. 30 years at Coors Field, or 30 seasons, I should say, at Coors Field. They only won 12 games in 2020, but that, of course, was a 60-game season, so there's only 30 games that year that was played at Coors Field. Coincidentally enough, today, June 22nd, is the 5-year anniversary that MLB made the announcement that there would only be 60 games in the 2020 season. So 12 is the fewest. They're probably going to be able to get there. That won't be a problem. But 400 winning percentage, that basically breaks down to 32 wins this year. And in order to do that, they're going to have to go 24-30 the rest of the way to finish at 400. That's doable. That seems doable, right? For a team that is typically about 500 at home. And yet, just with how they've been playing at home, it hasn't been great. They've been outscored 125 runs. So the run differential is negative 125 at home this year. The worst run differential through 37 games, even dating back to the late 1800s, before the modern era. Or rather, I should say, when you include the modern era, or you include the period before the modern era. In the modern era, yes, since 1901. We call it that because the game was totally different. So I'm not going to say that the baseball that was played there is totally irrelevant, but we've got statistics, but we don't have certain specifications of those statistics. They played in tied games. It was very strange. Their fewest wins, the Rockies, at home in a typical 162-game season, was 35 wins in 2012. That was a rough season. In order to do that, they're going to have to be exactly 500, 27-27, in order to tie that record for fewest amount of wins here at home at Coors Field. So they've got their work ahead of them. If you got questions in the chat, I will pull it up. I will answer them. I will talk to you. Felix, glad you're at the game today. Glad you saw a victory. I feel like anytime you're at the ballpark, they usually come away with a win. So you might be bringing them a little bit of good luck. I think it was helpful, to say the least, that Corbin Carroll was not available this weekend for the Diamondbacks. He got hit on the hand in Toronto on Wednesday. He sat out games against the Blue Jays on Thursday and Friday. Friday, manager Torey Lovullo talked about being really cautious with Corbin Carroll. He's going to get an MRI on his left hand on Monday in Chicago, their third city in a 3-city road trip. And they're being really cautious with him because they weren't quite as cautious with Gabriel Moreno, their star catcher. And because he played on that, he's wiped out. That ended up fracturing his hand. The imaging didn't show it up at first. He played on it and it got worse. He might not even be back until after the All-Star break. So they're going to be cautious with that. So no Corbin Carroll in this series whatsoever. Didn't even come off the bench to pinch run. But really, Sunday was about 2 guys. It was about Antonio Senzatela. How you doing, Senza? That was a nice outing. He pitched into the 6th inning, 5 1/3 innings, 4 base hits, only walked 1, allowed 2 runs, so a little bit shy, 2 outs shy of a quality start. But that was great for him, striking out a season-high 5 Arizona Diamondbacks. First start with at least 5 strikeouts since 2022, which he did that in San Diego. So he's now logged back-to-back winning decisions for the first time in his career since 2021. So a guy that has 10 losses that I think some folks are looking at saying Is he going to lose 20 games and become the first pitcher to lose 20 games since Mike Maroth of the Detroit Tigers in 2003? We'll see. But since really struggling and having such a bad month in June, or rather bad month in May, and then the first part of June, he's now allowed only 2 earned runs in 10 1/3 innings pitched over his last 2 starts. So that was really big for him. There's some news about some starting pitchers currently on the IL, and they might be coming back, but depending on whether Austin Gomber and Herman Marquez get traded, you might need him to fill that spot in the rotation. We're going to have to wait and see. But Mickey Moniak continues to impress. He gets his first Rockies Insider thumbnail over on the YouTube side of things. Make sure you're subscribed to the Rockies Insider on YouTube so you know when I am going live, so you can see exclusive conversations with players. There's a video up right now of Mickey Moniak talking about the opportunity that the Rockies have afforded him. And you'll see him laugh during the middle of the conversation because Tyler Freeman, who he has now hit it off with very well, they were 1-2 in the lineup on Sunday, but Tyler Freeman, as players are wont to do, they kind of jump in the back of the scrum with a camera like, hey, you're a big deal. I'm going to record you. And so that was a good moment. That was a nice laugh that Mickey, Freeman, and the rest of us in the media had. So make sure you check that out on the Rockies Insider over on YouTube. But Moniak with the big 3-run home run, the go-ahead 3-run home run to lift the Rockies. At that point, since June 6th, Mickey Moniak was batting 400, an even 400, 14 for 35 with 2 doubles, a triple, 6 homers, and 12 RBI. Moniak has now homered in 4 of his last 6 games, 6 of his last 10. And right now in the month of June, he is one of only 13 players with 6 home runs in the National League. In fact, the Rockies have 3 players with at least 6 home runs in the month of June. Moniak and Ryan McMahon both have 6 home runs, and Hunter Goodman is tied for 3rd with 7. Only Cubs' Ian Happ has more with 8, and Eugenio Suarez, who we did see this weekend, he's got 10 this month. Schaefer saying in the postgame that Moniak continues to be a big part of what the Rockies do. So he's been playing really well for Colorado in right field, a little bit of center, moving to the top of the lineup, bouncing around, and really just performing incredibly well. So he continues to be a bright spot. His career high in homers is 14, which he's done the last 2 years. Already has 11 now before the All-Star break. So really positive for a 27-year-old guy who was a former first overall pick in 2016 to the Philadelphia Phillies. Seems like he's kind of been cast off a little bit. Certainly the Phillies offloaded him to the Angels. The Angels got rid of him, didn't make the roster at the beginning of this season, and the Rockies seizing that, giving him an opportunity, and he has played really well. And so has Tyler Freeman, who's been another player that the Rockies picked up really late in spring training, basically hours before the season was starting. Moniak and Freeman, both Southern California guys. Freeman in the second pitch of the game, he was hitting leadoff again on Sunday. He extended his hitting streak to a career-long 10 games. He's tied for the longest hitting streak by a Rocky this season. Jordan Beck also had a 10-game stretch, May 1st to May 11th. And in 21 games since May 30th, Tyler Freeman has a 403 batting average and an on-base percentage just under 500%. Like, he is getting on base a lot. You're not going to see him at the top of a lot of leaderboards in terms of batting average or on-base percentage. He's just not qualified, doesn't have enough at-bats. In order to qualify for a batting title or even the on-base or slugging percentage title, you have to qualify, and the magic number is 3.1 times the amount of games your team has played. So at the end of a season, you take 162, multiply it by 3.1, and that's how many plate appearances you need to have in order to qualify for a batting title. So right now, you do that math with the 70-plus games that the Rockies have played times 3.1. Freeman does not have the 210-plus plate appearances in order to qualify for that. But, in a month or so here, he may very well do that and contend for a batting title. We shall see. But Moniak and Freeman together have really been the best offseason acquisitions for GM Bill Schmidt. And we saw how aggressive that the Rockies were on the base paths this weekend. They stole 3 on Sunday and tied their season high for 3 stolen bases in back-to-back games. 6 steals during this series against the Diamondbacks are the most in any series this season. So 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. It helps that the Diamondbacks Gold Glove Award winning catcher, Gabby Moreno, is on the IL. So you know what? Rockies can take advantage of that, and they very well should. So good for them. In the chat, Mickey and Freeman starting to grow on you. I like to hear that in the chat. Yeah, they've been 2 surprise players that have done really well, and they still have several years of club control. So while they were signed to 1-year deals, actually that's not true. I think Moniak was signed to a 1-year deal, and Freeman came over in a trade, so there was no signing. But with a lot of guys, when they're signed to a 1-year deal, if they are still in arbitration, maybe they're only in their first year or even second year of arbitration, they can still be under club control. So Moniak, yes, signed a 1-year deal, but he does not have enough service time to become a free agent after this season. He entered this year with 3, so that means he still has 2 more years of club control even beyond this. So he could be around for 3 more years before he hits free agency, or rather 3 years with the Rocky, this and the next 2. So they played really well. Again, good acquisitions by GM Bill Schmidt. Saturday was a tough loss, 5-3, a game that they should have won. Friday was a game they should have won. On Saturday, there were enough miscues that ended up costing the Rockies. That doesn't happen. They very well could win that ball game. And that's something that we've seen in the games that the Rockies have won. Either the opposing team is making those kind of miscues, or they themselves do not make the miscues and things go their way. That's how you win ball games, is by not giving away outs and giving away runs. Ketel Marte had that. I thought it was a double, but they ended up, I think, changing it. That ball that dropped in shallow left field on Saturday night, that I think would have been his 3rd double, but it was ultimately ruled a single with an error on Jordan Beck. A single, and Marte advances to second base on an error. That ball dropping in, you can't have that happen. Mickey Moniak get picked off of second base in the 1st inning. Carson Palmquist couldn't field that Geraldo Perdomo swinging bunt in the 1st inning. So it wasn't an error, but it was just another thing that didn't go the Rockies' way. Palmquist did not go more than 5 innings. It hasn't gone more than 5 innings in any of his 7 starts so far. First starter in franchise history to not reach the 6th inning at least once in their first 7 starts. So somewhat of a bad omen. He does get optioned on Sunday down to AAA, where he was probably going to get a few more starts, especially with some of the good news coming out of the training room, to say the least, with a couple of injured pitchers. Angel Chivigi did get called up for Sunday's game, so gave the Rockies 9 relievers in the bullpen. Did need them ultimately on Sunday, but as an extra arm, that's always good to have. Jordan Beck homered in that game. That was his 10th of the season. And now the Rockies have 3 guys with 10 home runs. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. I got to grab my notes. Is there somebody else that has 10 home runs that I don't know? Moniak with 11. We know Goodman's got 14. Oh, that's right. Ryan McMahon does have 12. So the Rockies now have 4 guys with 10 home runs. So nice for him. He homered in 2 of 4 games there with that dinger on Sunday after having no home runs through May 17th. So he's been doing really well over the last 16 games, 292 batting average. He was hitting 3rd in the lineup on Sunday. And then Friday's loss was another tough one. Sure, they lost 14-8, but they did have a 6-run inning in the 4th that put them ahead 7-6. And it really started to look like, you know what? The Rockies, the tides have turned for the Rockies. They're playing so much better under Warren Schaefer, and they always play about 500. I sound like a broken record at home, because they do. They just always know how to turn things up a little bit at home. And it looked like, you know what? Friday is the start of them getting back to those winning ways at Coors Field, or at least those 50% winning ways in Denver. And yet they end up coughing up that lead. And that game goes down as one of the worst pitched I think, in franchise history. You didn't have a strikeout until the 9th inning. I think it was one out, Lourdes Gurriel, in the 9th. So they struck out one hitter that entire game. They gave up 14 runs, and they also allowed 21 hits. That stat line has never happened before in the history of the Colorado Rockies. Austin Gomber allowed 12 on his own. That tied a career high. Actually, no, that was a career high, but it tied a career high of 9 runs. That's happened 4 times in his career, and he gave up a career high tying 3 home runs in that game, failed to record a strikeout in that game. Only time in his career that he has never recorded a single strikeout in a start. So that was rough for them to get 6 runs in that inning. It was the 4th time that they had recorded 6 runs in a single inning. They just did it earlier in the week in Washington when they had another nice performance, and they were able to get a win there. They hadn't had 7 hits in a single inning since last August against Atlanta. And the ball was flying really all weekend, but particularly Friday and Saturday. Friday more so. It was just so hot. There wasn't a ton of movement in the air. It was windy pregame, and I think it kind of died down. Ketel Marte probably should have had about 4 home runs this series. He did have a homer on Friday night, 30 out of 30 ballparks in his 449-foot home run. If you go to Baseball Savant, you can look and see like what the expected batting average is on a ball that's put in play. And you can also see how many ballparks a fly ball would have been a home run in. And so it's, most at bats, 0 out of 30. If you strike out, it's nothing. It's null and void. But sometimes you'll have a ball that you say, hey, 1 out of 30. And you go, oh, of course, that would have been a home run, shallow right field porch at Yankee Stadium or any of the ballparks that have those really, Fenway Park in right field, wrap it around Pesky's pole. Sure, you can have those home runs and you say at 1 out of 30, that's not really a home run. But Marte all weekend had a ton. He had a 28 out of 30 on his double. He had a 3 out of 30 on a flyout. And then on Saturday, he led off with a 26 out of 30 double, a 25 out of 30 double. So he should have had about 3 home runs this weekend. I'll go back on that 4 and say he should have had 3. And then he got a gift on the pop-up that a 1% chance of being a base hit on that ball that dinked in shallow left field between McMahon and Beck. So Arcia, I think, got some bad luck on Friday. He had one that was at 380 feet and another that was at 423 feet that he pimped, tossed his bat away, but both were caught. And particularly the second one was not great. Those were both 25 out of 30. Arcia just continues to play really well and help keep things loose in the clubhouse. That has been definitely an ongoing trend. And the Rockies are winning more now that they're keeping things looser and they've shed that skin. A lot of it had to do with, I think, saying goodbye to Bud Black. They've shed that skin and they are now playing with a renewed sense and a renewed purpose that, look, we're not going to make things up and turn around and win 20 ball games at a clip. So you know what? Let's just win today. Something that Warren Schaefer said in the Sunday pregame was, he said, look at the Coastal Carolina coach, what he said. And it's true. Don't look at him getting ejected later on in that game on Sunday. That was wild if you've been watching the College World Series. But, the coach of Coastal Carolina said, we're trying to really build something. And if we win our second national championship in 9 years, we're going to be on the map. But we do that by just winning a pitch. That's it. Winning a single pitch. And when you do those kind of things, when you take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. And that's been part of the approach for the Rockies under Warren Schaefer. Do have to talk about Eugenio Suarez because he recorded his 3rd multi-homer game of the season, 19th of his career on Friday. Went 4 for 6, 2 home runs. Second home run was the 300th of his career. He's now one of 12 active big leaguers with 300 or more dingers in their career. Added one on Saturday. If you were watching the broadcast, the young man who caught that ball was sitting there with the ball. He shooed away the usher to get that ball. I'll have you know, the Rockies did make the trade. The great staff, the excellent crew at Coors Field, they were able to make that trade. And so Eugenio Suarez does have that baseball, hit the 300th of his career, which is nice because Eugenio Suarez is 3rd on the all-time list of Venezuelan-born players for most home runs. So that means a lot, not just to Suarez, but the country of Venezuela. It's been fantastic. Miguel Cabrera has the most, future Hall of Famer, we know, 511. And then number 2, your Colorado Rockies big cat, Andres Galarraga at 399. So Suarez right there at number 3 with 301 home runs. He does hold the single season home run for most dingers by a Venezuelan-born player when he had 49 in 2019. He's now got 25 homers this season. That's 4th most in the majors, and I believe that makes him 3rd in D-backs history for most homers before the All-Star break. He very much will be in Atlanta for the All-Star game. Let's get to some of those injuries for the Rockies. I do want to point out that the Diamondbacks, boy, oh boy, I talked about it already over the weekend. They had even more injuries. It was wild. I sat in with Troy Lavello on Friday in his office. He did not talk to media in the dugout, which some managers choose to do. It was an absolute scorcher. So no, we enjoyed the air conditioning in his office on the third base clubhouse. AJ Puck, left elbow surgery. His season's over. Tommy Henry, his season's over. Tommy John. Adrian Del Castillo has a low back spasm, so he's on the 15-day IL. But Christian Montes de Oca, his back issues, not good. Back surgery. His season is over. Better news for Ezequiel Tovar. He's been running, taking off from a standing position. But the oblique injury is always a tricky one. Schaefer said on Sunday, unfortunately, there's just no timetable. So I don't think there's a rush also to bring back Ezequiel Tovar, especially when you got Ryan Ritter playing, solid baseball. He hasn't torn the cover off the ball, but he's definitely looked like he's belonged a lot more in the majors. 6 RBI since he's been called up. So doing enough of the little things. The defense has been strong. I don't think he's made an error yet. So he's been playing really well. That can be the silver lining of Tovar being on the IL. Don't rush him back. And while he's gone, you're getting a chance to showcase and really see what you've got in a guy like Ryan Ritter, who maybe he's your starting third baseman next year or your starting second baseman next year. That can be one of the positives. I asked Schaefer on Friday, any update on KB? And I got a one-word answer. He said, 0. I will also leave it at that. Tanner Gordon, who has a left oblique issue, he's got a rehab start coming up on Tuesday with Albuquerque when they are in Las Vegas playing the Aviators. He should start on Tuesday and then next Sunday, and then perhaps he is back in the starting rotation. Tyro Estrada, still haven't seen him back with his bruised right hand, was not in the starting lineup for the 4th straight game. Actually, maybe it's the 5th, but he doesn't feel like he needs a stint on the IL. Not sure if that will happen or not when we get to the ballpark on Tuesday. But Kyle Freeland, good news is he's going to throw a little session on Tuesday if all goes well there, which I imagine it will. Expect him to start on Friday against the Brewers in Milwaukee as he comes back from low back stiffness. He's been pretty lucky with back issues in his career. Said he had a little back issue in 2020 during spring training, but they were able to nip that in the bud, took care of it right away. Freeland has pitched really well in Milwaukee during his career. 4 starts, 2.88 ERA in 25 innings pitched, 18 strikeouts, and only 3 walks. It's actually tied for his lowest earned run average at any ballpark that he's had at least 4 starts in. Has a 2.88 ERA also at Citi Field in 5 outings, 4 starts. His first appearance was in relief back in 2017. I don't recall that one exactly. Some other ballparks he's been really good at. Nationals Park, 2.96 ERA in 5 games started. In 12 games at Petco, 3.53 ERA. And in 10 starts at Oracle Park in San Francisco, 3.54 ERA. Last but not least, Ryan Feltner, 3 innings pitched in his rehab start on Saturday. All reports were that he looked good, allowed only 1 run. Still going to make 1 more rehab start as he tries to return from back spasms before he returns to the Rockies rotation. Should all go well. If you looked at that box score on Saturday, Isotopes versus the Rainiers in Tacoma, you'll have also noticed Daniel Bard's name in that box score as he pitched in that contest. I believe he struck out 3 in a row in what was his second outing. His first outing, his season debut, I believe that was on Thursday. He ended up striking out Zach Veen for his first strikeout of the season. Rockies Insider with me, Patrick Lyons, your Rockies Insider, talking about some more ballpark bites from this weekend in the D-backs series, a Dodgers preview, and I got some good stuff on Michael Toglia too. Coming back from a road trip, it's always nice to just get in the clubhouse, get a lay of the land, seeing what's new, seeing what's different, talking with players, catching up on them, what that road trip was like for them. And one of the first interactions I ended up seeing on Friday was Ryan Rolison. He was so excited. He had something to show Clint Hurdle, the bench coach and former hitting coach. Earlier this year, he was the hitting coach. And I was like thinking to myself, Ryan Rolison and Clint Hurdle, other than being on the Rockies, what do they have in common? What kind of connection? And I saw what Rolison was showing Clint, and he looked, they smiled, they laughed, and Rolison, flipped his magazine to me, and it was that Sports Illustrated back in, gosh, I'm not even sure what year it was, in the late 70s, 78, when Clint Hurdle was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a big prospect for the Kansas City Royals. And so Rolison got it on eBay. I think he has another one. And apparently Hurdle said, yeah, if you get a copy, if you can find a copy of that Sports Illustrated, I will sign it for you. So Rolison has 2 autographed edition of Sports Illustrated with Clint Hurdle, a young Clint Hurdle on the cover now 45 years ago. So that I thought that was really neat. And something that I need to work on for an article. I've been talking with some folks about it. Rockies Clubhouse is wild about Binho. Have you seen this? Binho. It's a fun little game. You could call it a board game, but it's not like you're rolling a die or dice and moving around a board. I had something, gosh, I don't even see it in stores. This is probably going to age myself, but it's called knock hockey. It's like air hockey, but with no air. It's just on a wooden board. But Binho is like a miniature soccer field with almost like 10 bowling pins in front of the goal. So you can't just kick the soccer ball in the goal. You got to hit it with some angles, but you're not kicking it. You're flicking your finger. You're using a little dexterity on your index finger. And this was something that they had in the clubhouse in LA at Dodger Stadium. They had it in Miami, and the guys really seemed to like it. And it helped improve the vibe a little bit in the clubhouse. So Victor Vodnik was kind of at the forefront of it. Reached out to Binho to try to get some for the clubhouse, and they didn't get back to him right away. So, Victor asked the clubhouse manager, Tiny Ponarelli, hey, get a couple of these. So Tiny did, and they got one with Chelsea logo on it and Liverpool. And these guys have been playing. I think I talked about it on the last homestand. And on this one, they actually had a custom Rockies one made. We had black turf with the interlocking CR logo in the middle with a couple, some purple trim. It was very cool looking. So that has been, taking the clubhouse by storm. And the guys like it. They have a good time. It's helping with the bonding. It's helping keep things loose. And they've been winning a lot more since they've been a little bit looser. The guys were very loose. Now, here's the thing. When it's really hot out, you're loose, but you can also cramp up. Ironic? I don't know. But the first pitch temperatures for Friday and Saturday were bad. In fact, on Saturday, it was the second day in a row that it was 98 degrees. That's tied for the second highest first pitch temperature in franchise history. They had one game back in 2012, June 25th. So again, right at the smack dab start of summer, like this was, where it hit 100 degrees against the Nationals. It later reached 105 degrees at some point in that day in Denver, but 100 was the high in Denver that day. So it's been 2 really hot ones, and the 98 degrees on both Friday and Saturday have been the hottest first pitch temperature in Major League Baseball this season. I imagine there was, I know it was like 108 degrees in Arizona at one point, but because they closed the roof and they have the air conditioner, does that change the temperature? Yes, it's got to be, right? Because the Diamondbacks definitely had some scorchers down there earlier on this season. I mean, just a couple weeks ago. And on the East Coast with the humidity, it's got to feel a lot hotter than what the temperature says. So, was it really the hottest? I don't know. But if you're just looking at temperature and forgetting humidity, hottest of the year. You probably saw on Friday, there was that big Ryan meetup where in center field, they had the white t-shirts. Ryan McMahon was wearing one during warm-ups on Saturday. But now they were trying to set a record, and maybe they did as in terms of the most Ryans ever. But the Guinness Book of Records, World Records, they had an event not that long ago where in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they had 2,325 people named Ivan meet up. And the Ryans, they're not going to out Ivan the Ivans. And now I think there's about 700 tickets sold for the event, not 700 Ryans, but there were 700 tickets sold. So if you're married to a Ryan or you're good friends with a Ryan, you're going to be a part of that ticket package. So, maybe it was more like 500. Regardless, they showed out. They're hoping to like host a Ryan Con and smash the Ivan record, but I don't think that happened. I wasn't paying attention that, Ryan Harris, who was on the Super Bowl 50 championship winning Denver Broncos team, threw out the first pitch. I saw that and it didn't resonate with me. Ryan Rollison was there to catch the first pitch. It was pretty wild. The section in center field, every time a Ryan was announced, they went crazy. Thankfully, Ryan Thompson, reliever for the Diamondbacks, didn't warm up, didn't get in that game. That would have been a little confusing. But before and after every Ryan Ritter and Ryan McMahon at bat, they went crazy. When Ritter doubled in his first at bat, he did acknowledge the Ryans in center field. He did directly give them some love. But when McMahon homered, he did not. Let's be clear. He did not acknowledge the Ryans. Now, he did put his hand up, but that is to acknowledge the relievers in the bullpen in right center field. So that was not for the Ryans. I hate to do that to you Ryans out there, but that was not for you. I did ask McMahon on his way out, leaving the clubhouse, did you hear the cheering each time? And he said, quote, I heard them for all the Ryans. So I'm not sure all the Ryan announcement, all of the Ryan chants, because they were pumped up with all the Ryans. So that was some silliness, but I think a good kind of silly. That definitely helped some things out. On Sunday, you might remember that Ryan Ritter struck out when he bunted a ball foul with 2 strikes. That's the rule. If you're bunting with 2 strikes and it's foul, it is considered a strikeout. Schaefer did say in the post game on Sunday that Ritter did that of his own volition. That was his choice, and the bunt was on to start the at-bat to get the runner over, which probably would have resulted in an RBI, no harm, no foul, as they did win on Sunday 4-2. We had a fly ball in the next at-bat, so you got to think sack fly there. But Schaefer said, hey, can't fault him for that, for trying to make up for not getting the bunt down in the first 2 at-bats, or rather the first 2 pitches. Saturday was the University of Nebraska night. Now, they do these special edition hats that is part of a ticket package where, again, if you buy it, boom, you get the hat. So it's not a giveaway. They actually sold out. This is the first time I think I've ever seen something like that happen at Coors Field. Because usually, if you go to Rockies Fest, anyone that's gone to Rockies Fest knows if you go to the garage sale, they always have the university caps on a severe markdown. Are they $1? I don't know. They might even be less than $5. But they've got them all for Air Force, Wyoming, CSU, Metro State, UNC, you name it. But you might not be getting one. They usually order extra. So maybe they'll have some Nebraska ones. So if you didn't get one now, I hate to tell you, you might not get one during Rockies Fest. The attendance on Saturday, the best of the series, not great overall, but it was 34,000, and the Rockies reached 1 million in total attendance at Coors Field here in game number 36. The same amount of time it took them to do that last year. They're still down about 614 per game over the first 36 dates. There was 28,000 on Sunday, so I'm not sure if that keeps pace or not. With the Dodgers in town Tuesday through Thursday, I don't know that we're going to get sellouts. I don't know. I did go online to look to see what the ticket sale situation is. I think you can get in on Tuesday for like $22, just for the worst seat in the house. Not too bad. Not too bad to see Ohtani and company. But I did look, if you were going through Ticketmaster and getting through the Rockies just to see what the ticket availability was like. And it did look like they were a lot sold. So maybe, for a Tuesday through Thursday series with attendance not having been so great this past weekend, might be a big uptick. The Reds made me take notice this past weekend. First, with Garrett Hampson getting designated for assignment. He was picked up by the Reds after he was let go by the Diamondbacks. Only played 9 games in his Reds career, went 3 for 18, double walks, 6 strikeouts, played all over, all 3 infield positions except first base, left field, and center. And the other one was the call-up, the promotion of their top pitching prospect, Chase Burns, who was the number 2 pick in the 2024 MLB draft, got a nice $9 million signing bonus. And he is now the 5th player taken in the first round from last year's draft to make their debut. So that's certainly something when you're talking about Charlie Condon and looking at the Rockies closely and carefully and saying, hey, they need to get more out of the guys that they draft. They need to produce stars. They need to get something. They need to get everyday players out of the draft. And, time will tell with Charlie Condon. We got a long way to go. He's still playing pretty well. I don't even want to say he's cooled down at Spokane because he's pretty much got a hit every day this past week against the Everett Aqua Sox. But, there's just a lot of other players that are, not in need of as much seasoning down in the minor leagues from the recent draft classes. So that's been interesting. It's been interesting to see Michael Toglia play a little bit better. Sunday, the strikeout was back in the game just a little bit. But Schaefer has said that, since Toglia has been promoted, he's been a lot more calm, a lot more confident. And, he had the right mentality when he got optioned to AAA. That's obviously a bummer when you hit 25 home runs and then you're not getting it done offensively on a team that just isn't getting it done to begin with. You'd think that's, like neither here nor there. But for him as an individual, he had to go down and work on a couple of things. And, he got himself into a better mindset, a better mental space. And he's brought that back with him to the Rockies. I sort of thought that, maybe he put some pressure on himself going into this season after hitting 25 home runs last year. And, Schaefer didn't necessarily take that and say, yeah, he's put pressure. I think every guy has a certain amount of pressure. But what he did say was, Schaefer, what he did say was that the next step for Toglia isn't necessarily hitting 30 home runs or 40 home runs, which now at this point in the year, you say it might be too late for that. But the next step in a guy like Michael Toglia's career is to do it again, is to have that consistency, is to, when you're trying to establish yourself and prove yourself, it's just to continue to do the same things that you've done before, but now do it again, do it for a second time, not have that sophomore slump. Toglia was not a rookie last year, but he was, it was the first time that he really broke out and had himself really a complete full season, despite the fact that he did spend a little bit of time in AAA in Albuquerque. But it was his first full season. And just doing that again is proving yourself, is validating your success, doing it defensively, providing great defense as he's been. So it's been consistency. That's been the next step. Schaefer said that if you try to force yourself to take the next step, it usually doesn't work out. And, you find that to be true for guys who maybe look too far ahead or just don't play the game that's right in front of you. I mean, let's not forget Kyle Freeland, 4th place finish in NL Cy Young Award voting in 2018. And what happened to him the next year? Option to AAA because, well, I'm not going to say what it was because, but you could certainly look and say, is he already looking ahead a little bit too far rather than taking one game at a time, doing what you need to do in the offseason, which he absolutely did. But you can get ahead of yourself in this game, and it can humble you. As Clint Hurdle likes to say, there's 2 types of players, those who have been humbled and those who will be humbled. And, Michael Toglia got humbled a little bit earlier this year, and now he's back, and he's been humbled now, and he's ready to move forward. JD, welcome back to the chat, saying, a month ago, I predicted the Rockies will have the 28th best MLB record this season. That's an improvement, right? They were last. Now they're moving up the totem pole a little bit. I mean, they still have the worst record in all of baseball right now. In fact, you're going to make me want to pull up the standings and find out exactly where they're at and who else has been struggling. The White Sox, okay, only 25 wins, 53 losses, but the Rockies are still 7 wins away from that. You've got also in the National League, the Pirates, 31 wins. So, yeah, the White Sox are still many games ahead of the Rockies. Still 7 just in the win column alone. So it's going to be a lot. I don't think the Rockies necessarily care where they're at in terms of 1 through 30. They just got to get their house in order and get more out of their guys, which is something that they've been doing. This series against the Dodgers, though, which starts Tuesday, June 24th, 6:40 p.m. start. In my notes, I had written, are we going to get Shohei Ohtani throwing the first inning on Tuesday with Justin Robleski taking over after the first? No, because Ohtani pitched on Sunday. I figured he wasn't going to pitch at altitude. I figured he was going to pitch at Denver, but my hopes were very high after Saturday night, and we hadn't seen him throw another outing with the Dodgers in a game that really counted. So we're not going to get Ohtani, but could get Justin Robleski against Germán Marquez, 3-8 with a 6.11 ERA on Tuesday. Wednesday, same 6:40 start time. Chase Dollander, his first start against the Dodgers. Really looking forward to seeing how he handles that, getting an opportunity to learn something, even if it goes poorly, even if, he takes the loss, even if, he doesn't go too deep in this game, which he has gone deep in his last 2 against some formidable foes. But this is going to be a learning experience for him. He's going to learn a lot more pitching against the Dodgers on Wednesday than he will pitching against the Las Vegas Aviators in AAA. So regardless of the result, this is where he needs to be. He'll be pitching against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He's 6-6 with a 2.76 ERA. Crazy. You have a sub-3 ERA, and you have as many losses as wins. Yamamoto, you might recall, did make a start last year at Coors Field. Lasted 5 innings, allowed just 2 runs, struck out 6, didn't walk a single batter. We'll see how he ends up faring. And then on Thursday, Austin Gomber against Clayton Kershaw, the battle of the left-handers. Kershaw 3-0 with a 3.31 ERA. This will be his 28th start. Kershaw's 28th start at Coors Field. Other than Dodger Stadium, that is ties him for the most starts at any visiting ballpark. Oracle Park, he also has 28 starts at, most away from Dodger Stadium. His Oracle Park ERA is 1.64. His Coors Field ERA, 3 runs higher than that, 4.64. If you're curious, he's got 23 starts at Chase Field at a 4.08 ERA and 22 at Petco, 2.23 ERA. Dry air equals bad pitching. Arizona, Colorado, okay. A little bit of an ocean breeze. He's been absolutely excellent. Rockies, they continue to struggle with runners in scoring position in those big spots. They've been a little bit better under Warren Schaefer, trying to do those little things, advance the run of the 90 feet. But the Dodgers, no issues whatsoever entering Sunday. The Dodgers had 34 home runs with runners in scoring position. That leads the majors, and their 92 walks is tops in the NL with runners in scoring position. Will Smith, who very well is going to be the National League starting catcher in the All-Star game, has an MLB best 433 batting average. Not on base percentage, batting average. Guaranteed for a base hit. Every other opportunity that he gets. Pretty darn good. 4 home runs with ducks on the ponds. Tommy Edman right after him with 378 batting average. Andy Pages, who I think has a decent shot. He might not be the first round of All-Stars. If somebody gets hurt, I could see him possibly getting added. But Pages, 375 with runners in scoring position. And then you also got Hae-Sung Kim, the second baseman utility man. He's 10 for 20. So he's batting 500 in a more limited basis. Clutch with those opportunities. And that's what this 3-game series is going to be about, is that even if the Rockies should happen to jump out in front and you get a lead, the Dodgers will grind. The Dodgers do not give away at bats. They continue to play hard no matter who they're against, even when they're against the best teams. And when they're against a team that has the worst record in Major League Baseball, you know damn well that they are not going to take their foot off the gas. And they're going to say, yeah, we can win this game. We're down by 3 runs. That's one swing of the bat. One swing of the bat in this ballpark in particular. So, the Dodgers are not going to be a pushover by any means, even with, a big first inning or a big first couple of innings for the Rockies. The Dodgers are going to play this one tough, and you better believe they're going to want to get all three. And the Diamondbacks weren't able to do that. And, we're going to see the difference between a team like the Diamondbacks that's a little bit middling. They're about a 500 club. They've had their injuries. I think they're a lot better. I had them going to the postseason, but that was before everybody had Tommy John surgery. But even still, the Dodgers with their, 17 pitchers on the IL, something crazy like that, they are just a team that can get it done, and that they have a much better track record than the Diamondbacks. And they're in two different classes. The Diamondbacks are really, really good. The Dodgers are great. And it's going to be hard for the Rockies to win a game. And it's going to be hard for them to even hold on to a win should they get ahead. So I'm really looking forward to this 3-game set. The Rockies Insider. It's me, Patrick Lyons, the Rockies Insider, talking to you about those Colorado Rockies. Boy, oh boy, is there a lot to talk about with this team, with this organization. Hunter Goodman, Bud Black returning to the Rockies, and some comments made by Charlie Monfort, one of the owners of the Colorado Rockies. Let's get things started right now with Hunter Goodman, because you probably noticed not in the lineup on Sunday. And I think there was a game in Washington where he did not get the start. Hurt? Something going on behind the scenes? No, absolutely nothing. This is all about load management for Hunter Goodman. This is the most games that Goody has caught professionally, even when he was in the minors. Remember, now I just wrote about this for justbaseball.com. You can read the article all about Hunter Goodman putting together what, very well could be the best offensive season for a Rockies catcher of all time. But Hunter Goodman in the minors, drafted as a catcher out of the University of Memphis, his bat was so good that his catching was not going to hold him back. His bat was so good that they kept advancing him to, multiple levels. He was at 3 different levels in 2023. So 2022, excuse me. But low A, high A, double A, and most of that was at first base and corner outfield, because catching, he just wasn't there yet. And that's one of the reasons why, the Rockies have been, as an organization, have been a little reticent to have him catch, because he just doesn't have the experience. He doesn't have those 10,000 hours in the same way that so many other catchers do that are in the major leagues. And he's finally getting that opportunity, which is great, but they got to be careful about him getting worn out. Coincidentally, saw something on YouTube. Trevor May was talking about this. I don't know how old the clip was, but it's timeless. And it was just talking about catchers, and how to get the most out of them is to not wear them down. Defense is where a catcher is never going to slip up, because they can't slip up. They've got to catch. They've got to block balls. They can't take pitches off. They got to be locked in. And so during a long season, during the dog days of summer, a catcher has to do that, and they will do that. Then, if they're absolutely wiped, they're going to have nothing at the plate, or they're going to be limited at the plate. And that's okay. I mean, you saw that last year after Will Smith. I don't know if it was a hit by pitch or if it was an errant foul ball, but he was banged up for the entire second half last year for the Dodgers, and yet he was still critical for them in winning that World Series, because what he was able to do behind the plate was something that no other Dodgers catcher was capable of doing for them at the time. So, hey, if you can provide something offensively, that's a bonus, but you've got to be able to be healthy behind the plate and have enough energy for that. And so far, Goodman got plenty of energy at the plate, and he's been playing pretty much every day. First 2 games of a series, first 2 night games, he's behind the plate, strapping on the tools of ignorance. And then that third game, it's a day game. Okay, you're the DH. We need to keep your bat in the lineup. But do the Rockies really need to keep his bat in the lineup? They need to keep him healthy. They need for him to have a complete season this year as a catcher. And you can do that a lot better by really making sure that you don't wear him down. And so that's been somewhat of a new approach for the Rockies going forward. That's what Warren Schaefer said during some of the pregame scrums, is that they're going to look to get him some more days off. They're going to look to, play Braxton Fulford a little bit more so that Goodman can have more true days off. Even when he's not catching, there's going to be some times where he's not in the lineup as the designated hitter. Sure, the lineup isn't going to be as strong, but we know that this season is lost. A couple wins here or there is really not going to change the fortune of this organization. But a few games here and there where Hunter Goodman is at his best or better because he's fresh, because he's sharp, that very well could make a difference for this organization. So they're going to really manage his load in a big way. I asked if perhaps the Rockies could go with 3 catchers so that, Goodman, when the time is needed or when it's necessary, maybe he's only catching 1 game a series and then he's a DH for another, and then game 3 of a series, he gets the day off. And Schaefer said no. First he just felt like the answer was probably not. And then as we kind of talked it out a little bit, he's like, you know what, we'll just play Fulford more. We don't need a 3rd catcher, right? You can just play Fulford 2 of those games behind the dish, and then Goodman can catch 1 of the games and then be the DH in the other and get that 3rd day off. Like, if that's how they can help keep him a little bit fresh. Now, I would argue, and I wouldn't argue this full time. I don't think they do need 3 catchers, but I looked at it from this perspective that Thairo Estrada, not playing, not healthy, also not on the IL. You're playing a man short on the bench. And again, what I just said was wins and losses not terribly important. So, you're going to call up Ariel Amador to sit on the bench for 4 or 5 games? No, but you could promote Drew Romo. You could put Estrada on the IL, promote Drew Romo, so you're not shorthanded. And then when Estrada is healthy, you can then send Romo back down. Like that's a way to give, some guys more playing time, a little bit more seasoning, and not be shorthanded. But that's going to be the exception to the rule. It's going to be very specific situations in which that would work out. And they might still end up doing something like that at some point. But again, that is going to be more of an exception to the rule. You're also probably curious, how is Drew Romo doing? 250 batting average. Okay. But only a 294 on base percentage and a 359 slugging. So overall, not great. Only has 1 home run in 17 games with the Isotopes, just 4 RBI. Remember, he did start the season on the IL, injuring, I believe it was his thumb in one of the final games of spring training on the minor league side. Speaking of Hunter Goodman, when it comes to the All-Star game voting, Francisco Alvarez, who you may recall was actually 3rd in NL voting for catchers during the first update that was provided last week, he was actually optioned to AAA over the weekend by the Mets. So a couple days left. Thursday is the final day for phase 1 to be complete, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Get your votes in. Remember, there is a different system that has started back in 2022 where there are 2 phases, right? There's going to be multiple updates, but we're still in the midst of phase 1, and the top 2 vote getters at each position, top 6 in the outfield, go to phase 2, and then it's a face-off. And then fans are just voting on those 2 guys. It helps reset things a little bit. You can still stuff a ballot and get your guy into the final, but you can't stuff the ballot and then end up winning it all because of a really strong first couple weeks. So I do like that system really well. Will Smith is going to be a lock to start the All-Star game for the NL. But maybe Goodman can work his way up into number 2. Still very unlikely, but since this system got its start in 2022, the Rockies have yet to see any of their players in the finals, in the top 2 at a given position. How are the Rockies evaluating their talent? This is another thing that Schaefer has been talking about. He's sort of been chunking the evaluations. He's been sitting down with the coaching staff on a daily or nightly basis saying, in your area, whether that's the base running, the fielding, the bullpen, what went well in this game? What needed to improve in this game? Breaking it down little by little, because as I've said before, they're not going to go on a 20-game winning streak to try to erase that awful start in April and May. And even if they do win 20 games, they are still behind 500 by a lot. It's just an impossibility. So you can break things down on a game-by-game basis and try to win those smaller battles to then win a few more games, to then have a little bit more success on an individual basis. So I like this approach that Schaefer has brought to the coaching staff and to the team. He's been preaching that kind of aggressiveness. It was interesting to hear him say over the weekend that he wants to create chaos. Interesting that he's saying it at the same time that the Rockies were playing the Arizona Diamondbacks, who absolutely did that. They created and caused chaos all throughout that run in 2023 to get them to the World Series, just putting the ball in play, really similar to what we saw out of the Kansas City Royals in 2014 and 2015, their back-to-back World Series appearances and their World Series win in 2015. They just put the ball in play. They didn't strike out. They didn't give up outs. And that's something that I think the Rockies definitely need to take advantage of a little bit more. And we've been seeing more of that. It would be nice to see that on a series-to-series basis. It's been more of a, one game, they're putting the ball in play a lot more. The next 10 strikeouts. It would be nice to see them do it multiple times in a row. That's really when you're going to see a lot more momentum built and you're going to see a lot more wins for this organization. One of the bigger stories for the Colorado Rockies right now is a little tidbit, a little snippet in Bob Nightingale's article for USA Today saying that Bud Black could potentially be joining the Colorado Rockies. Now, you'll recall Bud Black was let go on May 11th on Mother's Day, the day after a really bad, really embarrassing 21-0 loss to the San Diego Padres. And, according to the sources, some of the sources that I've spoken to, there's been interest from multiple teams around MLB to bring Bud Black in because, he's a guy that doesn't have any interest in retiring. He's still sharp, right? He's got a good mind. He can still help an organization in some capacity if it's not on a day-to-day basis on the field. So, it wouldn't surprise me to see him continue on in his career. I really thought that Dave Roberts would try to bring him in at some point. And, if he waits until this offseason, maybe you do see him join the Dodgers. But he must be getting antsy. He wants to do something now, and he might get that opportunity because the Rockies are looking for something. Steve Foster, who's been the Colorado's director of pitching the last couple years, he served as a pitching coach from 2015 to 2021. Had a really good track record with Kyle Freeland, John Gray, Herman Marquez, Tyler Anderson, and Chad Bettis. I bring up Chad Bettis because, he did have a lot of success with the Rockies, but he was a Texas Tech Red Raider, and that's actually where Steve Foster just accepted a position in Lubbock, Texas, as their pitching coach. His son Casey was a graduate of University of North Texas, so he does have some ties to the region. And it'll be interesting to see if Bud Black does return to this organization. We won't see him on the field. He won't be a typical part of the day-to-day operations, but as a pitching coordinator for the minor leagues, for the guys that are getting developed, that there could be some value there for the Rockies. He did have that track record, Bud Black specifically, with that young starting rotation in 2017 and 2018. He pushed the right buttons there, and that's something that he might be able to do again for this organization. It's interesting because all of this comes on the heels of an article that was written by Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post. Spoke with Charlie Monfort, who is one of the owners of this team. He's not a primary owner like his brother, Dick Monfort. He was previously the primary owner. And, I've talked about Charlie a lot recently, partially because he deserves a lot more credit than I think he's gotten in recent years. He helped step up to raise the money that was needed to fund, the expansion here in Denver after some guys ended up dropping out. He was integral in that. He was the chairman and CEO in 2003, and for many years after that was that guy in 2007 where you needed a quote or you needed brass tacks. You needed to talk to somebody. He was the guy, the chairman and CEO of the Colorado Rockies during their only run to the World Series. It was Charlie Monfort. And, Monfort's been, a lot more vocal, obviously, by this article from the Denver Post. You can read that. Might be behind a paywall, but Patrick Saunders, he does an amazing job. Harding, they are two guys that, for me personally in my career, they've done a wonderful job, really showing me the ropes in various ways and helping me out. So I've learned a lot, even just by watching them. But just as people, they are good folks. So I really appreciate what they do and how they cover the team because as many scoops as I try to get myself, they outscoop me 5-1. I don't know. It's far beyond that. So they've got great connections and they do a wonderful job. But in speaking with Charlie Monfort, Patrick Saunders got a couple quotes that have a lot to do with the future of this organization in this, I don't want to say transition year because that word doesn't even really do justice to what's happening right now and what could very well be the worst season in MLB history in terms of wins and losses during the modern era since 1901. And certainly for a team that isn't an expansion club like the 1962 Mets. But transition doesn't feel right because it feels like a rebuild, and it feels like we don't even know if this is going to be a transition because the only thing that's changed besides the hitting coach and manager, well, that's it. Those have been the only things. It feels like there should be a transition. We don't necessarily have that yet, but some of the things that Charlie Monfort discussed with Patrick Saunders really, really underlines the potential for that to happen and the probability of a transition, of a change in the front office coming. Charlie said to Saunders, quote, "I think we need a new set of eyeballs. We need to give someone the opportunity, someone who knows baseball and has lived in baseball and sometimes died with baseball." I've said it before. I've said it very recently. The Rockies are a family business. They're not a sports business. They don't run themselves like a sports business. It's very much a family business. And when you have a family business, you might not necessarily employ the best people for the job, employ the people that you want for the job versus the people that are best suited for it, regardless of how hard they work and how they try their best. And they might be really good. I've said it before. If you want to hire me as the bench coach of the Colorado Rockies, I love baseball. I work hard. I know a lot about baseball, but guess what? There's a lot more people that are way more qualified than I am. So if you want to hire me, cool. You could pump me up. You could say really nice things about me. I would appreciate that. But I don't deserve that job. I shouldn't be the bench coach of this team. And you gotta get more baseball people, more baseball-minded people to make baseball decisions rather than making some of those business decisions or those loyalty or familial decisions. And I think that's really what Charlie is alluding to is all the people that are in the front office that have been around the organization for the duration, for the entirety of this organization. They're all a part of that family. That's nice, but that family has seen a lot of strife, and that family aspect or that focus on the family, unfortunately, has not done the Rockies very well historically, and it's finally come to a head in 2025. So there does need to be some search outside the organization. It's what Dick Monfort said he was going to do when Jeff Bridich stepped aside or was let go in 2021. And yet they stayed in-house because it was more comfortable. It was a little bit more convenient. Unfortunately, I think that built a certain level of complacency that really wasn't there before. And now you got to get out of that rut, and you need to do something a little bit more drastic. And that it's one of the reasons why, Bill Schmidt is on the hot seat and why the writing might be on the wall that something is going to change with this organization. Charlie Monfort also said that the Rockies might benefit from, quote, "someone who knows everything that all of the good teams we face do, from grassroots on up, someone who is going to stand by their decisions because they are going to live with it." You take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. And the little things has to do everything from analytics, from the coaching, from the development, and little investments. Yeah, the Rockies do all of those things in some capacity, but do they do it as well as other teams? No. Do they invest as much as other teams? No. That's the problem. It's investments. And then even when there is some investments that are being made, so in the international market, I think the Rockies have made some good investments. They've got some great people there. But are the right people being listened to? Are you taking someone's opinion that is saying this because that's what's best for baseball, or that might be what's best for them and their organization and everyone on down the line? Because if you draft a player, you spend a lot of time and money and effort developing this player, and it's not working out, well, that can be an indictment on the people who drafted them, the people who developed them, the entire organization. And to admit something like that means, well, what are we going to do to learn from this? What are we going to do to change? And the Rockies really haven't changed enough. Now they are being forced to do it. Being said, will they really do it? That I don't know. It feels like they're being forced to. The results on the field should force them to do that. I just don't think that it's necessarily going to happen. We're just going to have to wait and see this offseason. And I think there can be a debate. I don't think that one side really holds a lot of water, but there could be some debate of like, hey, bring in somebody new as the GM so that they can handle this deadline better. I don't think there's a ton of really great assets that if you have a different GM making those trades, you're going to miss out, and you're going to say, man, if I could have done this, if you had hired me a couple months earlier, I would have gotten all of this for the players that you traded away. I don't think there's going to be a big discrepancy from a great GM coming in and the job that may get done during the trade deadline this year. It's not going to be huge. The perfect the perfect person for the job maybe is going to get more, but I don't think it's going to be a ton. We're not talking if you're trading like Ezekiel Tovar, now all of a sudden, which I don't think is going to happen for anyone. No one's going to be doing that. That's the one guy I think that is safe. I think even more safe than Chase Dollander getting traded is Ezekiel Tovar. But even still, I don't think bringing in a new GM ahead of the trade deadline is actually of any benefit. So let him deal with the trade deadline. Let him even stick around to the end of the season, and then evaluate. You probably should have already made an evaluation now as to whether you want to keep him around. You can promote from within. I'm not out for anyone's job personally, but again, the writing is on the wall with the job that has been done for what very well will be 3 consecutive 100-loss seasons. The worst 4-year stretch now would probably be the worst 5-year stretch in franchise history, and what could also end up being the worst season in modern era baseball. There's really no way of sugarcoating and saying, hey, give so-and-so another shot. A lot of changes need to happen within this organization, and I think they're going to. I really think that very well has to happen for things to turn around for this organization going forward. And it still might take a couple years until any of that really takes root and start to see the fruits of all of those changes. At Patrick Lyons, at Patrick D. Lyons MLB, and at Rockies Insider on all the social medias. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so you can see all the interviews with players, all the YouTube shorts, so much more. You get the notifications when I am going live. So please make sure you're doing that over on the YouTube side. Leave a review anywhere you get the podcast. That would certainly be appreciated. Thank you to everyone listening, and thank you to everyone who's just through the airwaves giving me those wonderful bits of momentum. But unfortunately, that kind of momentum, that can only be as good as my next show. So naturally, I'll talk to you tomorrow.